Please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll start our meeting. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Amen, brother.
Good evening, everyone. This is the Union Township Board of Trustees regular meeting. This is for May 14th, 2020. Let the record show that all three trustees are present tonight. Also present is our fiscal officer, Mr. Ron Campbell. Just a reminder, gentlemen, since a lot of people are watching this online, make sure you talk directly into your microphone. We have a tendency to look at each other and then they can't hear us anymore. So we got a couple audience members they'll cue us if we're getting off track. So, but we'll go ahead and get started. The first item is approval of minutes. The first item would be the April 9th, 2020 regular meeting minutes. If you had a chance to look those over.
Yes, sir.
If there's no changes, I'll ask for a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. McGee?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Logue?
Yes.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And then we have the April 9th, 2020 zoning meeting minutes. If there's no questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve those.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Logue?
Yes.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
No special presentations tonight. In an effort to be cautiously safe, we've asked our department heads not to be here to not put any further risk towards them. But we will ask Mr. Ken Geis, our Township Administrator, to report for the administration.
Thank you. Pleased to announce that we did execute the lease with Air Care, and we hope that they will begin moving in soon. The lease actually starts in April, and we completed the necessary requirements for the security purposes, and we have installed a new camera and a backup system to that. So we're ready for them to move in, and with the current conditions, they really kind of asked us that if we could just be patient with them on when they actually will occupy the space, but it will be soon. We continue to update the website and our social media with the topical information, and we try to do that as quickly as possible, particularly as it relates to the Civic Center, the Union Township Parks, the cemetery, and our general operations. So we will maintain that on an as-needed basis. Also pleased to report that we are going to get the workers' comp rebate this year, and that was based upon the legislation passed by the Ohio legislature, and it's anticipated that we will receive over $297,000 back, which, you know, couldn't come at a better time for us with the reduction in revenue that we're going to see. There's a purchase order on the agenda tonight for some property on Beechwood Road. It's $173,000. This is a property that we had previously looked at several years ago. It was bought at auction before we could become involved in it. It's available again, and really I would recommend that the board authorize that, because this could possibly be a location for a firehouse in the north side of the township. Not saying that it will be a firehouse location, but really the property in that northern region that is acceptable for a site as a firehouse is really hard to come by now. And this kind of meets all of the criteria that the fire chief has established based upon the response times and access issues for that. So again, it's listed at market value, so if the township didn't move forward with that and they wanted to dispose of it, I don't think that they would suffer, you know, any significant loss as it relates to the property. We're completing the due diligence on that. We're under contract with them for that, no firm commitment to purchase that, but we would have to do soil samples and borings and phase one analysis to move forward. But there is a purchase order to authorize that, assuming that all those conditions are met. For the general operation of the township and the post office, all the employees that come in contact with the general public will be wearing masks in conformance with the governor's directive, as well as the health director's orders on that. Other employees that don't have general contact and they're in their own cubicles are not required to wear a mask unless they associate with other employees or the general public. We modified the facilities policies consistent with all the orders, and we updated, as I reported, all the IT information on that. We have a purchase order also and a resolution that relates to the TID and the Intelligent Traffic Management System. And what that will allow is, if the board agrees to that, is for us to install a system in all of our fire and EMS vehicles that will change the signals on the ITS system to a red during an emergency situation, which has really, in other parts of the county where that has occurred, that has been beneficial and it is a safety modification that warrants some consideration. And so I would recommend that the board pass that. Also like to report that we did receive a notice to negotiate with the service department for the AFSCME. I'll process that and begin that process. The last meeting, I had reported that we were probably going to lose about 15% of the gasoline tax allotment to Union Township in 2020. We've received a little further guidance from the Office of Management and Budget from the state, and they're indicating that the reduction will probably be closer to 35% for 2020. The loss of that will push the total impact to about $145,000 out of that fund, assuming all other conditions are the same. That means that we'll have a loss of revenue potentially for 2020 somewhere around $750,000. Could be more, it could be less than that. One of the considerations that I did take into account for that was that the local government fund would not be distributed this year. Whether that happens or not, I don't know. We have a resolution on the agenda that relates to that as well. But if there is a shortfall in the revenues from the state, and the governor recommended that there be a reduction of $775 million in the state budget for this year, and then going forward in 2021, I don't know that he's put a number on that yet. Assuming that we're going to be able to use the bond stabilization fund or the rainy day fund at $2.8 billion in that. If they get into that, then I would suspect that there's a good chance that we won't receive the local government fund, or we won't receive the full distribution of that. So again, that is accounted for in the $750,000. Our audit is underway in earnest now. Mr. Baston is here on site. He's done some initial testing on all of that. All initial reports shows that everything is fine. There's no errors or any problems with anything. I just want to alert the board that we will have a finding from the township based upon the cyber attack, that there will be some notice in that we were the victim of the ransomware that was placed on our system earlier this year. But again, one of the things that I can report is that no data was lost. We don't believe that any data was transmitted out of here. That the only thing that occurred was that they encrypted our data and parts of our backup on site. as Mr. McGraw pointed out, the Department of Supervisors, aren't here, assuming that we're back to some normal operation and assuming that we're probably going to cancel the second meeting in May, so the first meeting in June. If all things go as we believe they're going to go, then we'll direct the departmental supervisors back to that meeting, and we'll begin, and continue with the reports as normal. As I reported, there is a resolution relating to the local government fund in that, and this is a continuation of a resolution that the board and other townships, villages, the city of Milford and Clermont County adopted last year. It's on the agenda, and that was at the urging of the Clermont Township Association. My recommendation would be that we table that, and I believe that we should table that because they're in the current legislation that they've asked us to adopt. There is some financial consideration for the village of Amelia and the village of Newtonsville, which no longer are in existence, and I don't believe that that should be a consideration for this board. Road resurfacing purchase order is on the agenda as well. The bids came in lower than we had expected, and I think that that's probably a direct result as to the fuel prices that we currently are seeing in 2020. When the petroleum goes up and down, that's the biggest impact to the road resurfacing, in that even though the construction companies, particularly the infrastructure companies, are still very active in that, the offset for the actual cost of the material is significantly lower this year than it has been in the past, which benefits Union Township because the bids came in lower this year than we had anticipated. And the last thing, there is a resolution tonight that relates to the CARES Act, directly associated with the COVID virus, and I would recommend the board adopt that resolution because that allows us to seek reimbursement for all of the extra cost associated with the COVID virus, including but not limited to the PPE that we were required to purchase now and through the end of the year, some of the additional operations, moving our firefighters to the hotels for a period of time, and any of the other additional costs to the sanitizers that we've been required to purchase for the employees as well as the general public in that. And by passing that resolution, that enables the township to participate with Clermont County because we are all under the 500,000 population threshold that would allow us to directly participate in that. Because we're under that, we have to jointly agree to do that with the county. So that concludes my report for tonight.
All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And gentlemen, since the other departments aren't here, we do have their reports. Was there any questions about any of those for Mr. Geis or
No, I
anything
had
that
no
we need to
questions.
pursue?
After looking through them, I see no problem with it. I thank you for your report, Mr. Geis, and I look forward to a June meeting where we have a full DS up here. Again, have maybe some members out there. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Geis, yeah, as far as one thing with the other department head reports, just to confirm, I've heard and talked with other members in the community, but as far as increase of domestic violence and I mean, I've not in the township, but personally had a veteran that we looked after and took care of that took his own life a couple weeks ago. And discussion around that and out of that, I think those are some of the results that we are recognizing and seeing from these stay-home orders. So I just want to confirm that, are we recognizing and seeing that still in Union Township too, for an increase of calls?
We have, both from the police department and the fire and EMS department. The the calls for some of the domestic violence, the suicide calls, and the general disturbance calls that relate to issues associated with, person-on-person involvement in that. Those calls are spiking, and they have continued to spike during this entire incident.
Okay, all right. Yeah, thank you. I mean, that's the other added burden, that I think the community as a total feels, but then also our safety services, and where they're, again, extreme value added to all those affected family members and community members. Thank you. And just talking on safety services for a second, yeah, that is fantastic, to get the intelligent traffic management system, just the enhanced safety that can provide that additional capability. And then also, I'm very familiar with the Beechwood property, drive past that very frequently, and it's great lines of sight. I mean, it would be potentially for the long-term strategic plan to line up with the fire department's strategic initiative there for being able to provide high-quality services to all members in the township. I think it's a proactive thought, and it's absolutely very difficult to find any piece of property throughout the township, let alone something that would lend itself to being able to support potentially a fire department or fire building. So, yeah, good work. Thank you. Thanks for the report. Thank you.
And Mr. Geis, our EMS and police, we're not hearing any issues of the coronavirus amongst them. Is that correct?
We have not.
Okay.
Amen. Thank God.
And on that note, the additional protocol of keeping the fire and EMS physically separated in the hotel rooms that we did for the month of April, that ceased April 30th, right? Correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and I think that's another great proactive approach to that, and the police department going on the rotational change that they went. Correct me if I'm wrong on stating this, but it's is 7 days on for 12 hours, and then they would be off for 14 days. So if any member did start to show or develop any symptoms, they essentially were already under this shelter-in-place and self-isolation protocol.
Correct,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, great. So just like you said, I mean, right there, not having the impact of the safety services with no one who's right there on the front lines in our township every single day. So that's fantastic. That's good to hear. Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on. There's no public hearings tonight. Gentlemen, is there any old business? I'm not aware of any.
No?
Okay.
No.
No, sir.
We'll move on to new business. The first item is approval of payments. This is payment of our bills. These are presented by Mr. Ron Campbell, our fiscal officer. If there's no questions on these, I'll ask for a motion to pay the bills.
So moved. Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Logue?
Yes.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
The next item is approval of our monthly financial report. This is also prepared by Mr. Ron Campbell, our fiscal officer. If there's no questions, I'll ask for a motion to approve the monthly financial report.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Logue?
Yes.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes,
Motion carries.
thank you. Kind of weird having those on the front page. We'll move on to approval of our purchase orders. These are purchase orders that exceed $10,000. They're recommended by our township administrator, Mr. Ken Geis. Mr. Geis, could you first read through these before we vote on them?
The first is to the Clermont County TID. It's for the ITS Phase 3 signal preemption for the MS vehicles, $125,000. The second is to the Union Township CIC. That's for the funding for the Beechwood property at $178,000. The next is for Motorola Solutions Incorporated. It's for the CallWorks 911 system, 3-year payment portion of that, $26,105.62. And the last is for our 2020 road resurfacing program to J.K. Muir Corporation at $400,000.
Thank you very much. Any questions?
No.
Okay. I'll ask for a motion then to pay or approve the purchase orders as presented.
I move to approve the purchase orders as presented.
Second?
Roll call. Mr. Logue?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, then we'll move on to the 2020 roadway resurfacing project bid award. We're being asked to award, a motion to award the 2020 roadway resurfacing program to J.K. Muir Corporation in the amount of $354,200 as the lowest and most responsive and most responsible bidder. And this would also further authorize our township administrator to execute any and all relevant contractual documents thereto in furtherance of the same. Gentlemen, do you have any comments or questions about our 2020 road service resurfacing project?
No, sir, I do not.
No.
I'll ask for a motion then to approve this program.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. McGee?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Logue?
Yes.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And for the residents' benefit, we do list on our website past projects and also this project and future road projects. So you can review what streets are included in on that. So that's always a great project. I wish we could do more, and I wish, but it's great to see the roads get fixed.
Absolutely.
And it also includes, and a lot of people don't realize, there's quite a bit of curb work, sewer, fixing, some lower work underneath the surfacing that has to be
Absolutely,
redone.
yes.
So it includes that too. So. Okay, now we have some resolutions tonight. Our first resolution is 2020-09. This is the resolution regarding the local government fund, the alternative method, based on this table that goes along with this program, including two villages that no longer exist, gentlemen. I think we ought to table this program for the moment and take it up at our next meeting and look for a revised version of this same thing with the adjustments made to it.
Absolutely, I
So,
agree 100%.
Is there any discussion along those lines?
I'll just make that statement. I agree with you on that as far as, when I first saw it come through and when I first saw information on OTA chain come through, that, for me, a formula or a base table that does not have working formulas or the calculations that are being shown, makes it difficult to then track and try to back into anyone's numbers. And I think I recognize this as an estimate here, but even at that state, having a working formula is going to be the benefit, because that's really what you're looking at, because it's a pot of money, and we're looking at, the formula that's going to be applied to it evenly and fairly across the county. So large benefit out of that. I mean, just the rough math there, where you remove Amelia and Newtonsville, you see the increase for Pierce Township and Batavia Township, let alone the distribution for the 75% throughout the township. So, yeah, I agree with you. And it's just what I recognize with it coming through, and I'm the not to be the metaphorical young one on the street here, but I don't have the history of looking at this last year and knowing, what has been the course of business. But as my understanding of it is, the whole county would need to be in agreement with this agreement from 2019, that, it's really putting our best foot forward to have something that's actionable on day one, and it's really just gonna get ahead of having to kick it back so that we have to go back through it a second or third time, so.
Yeah, because we gotta, just for your benefit, we have to be in cooperation with all the other townships and villages, and we all have to be on the same page. And last year, there were revisions after we passed it, and then we had to come back and
Matter of fact,
remove one and pass another. So I think it's better to give them a chance to fix this, and then bring it back for our next meeting.
we don't need 3 more revisions like last year.
Yeah,
let's get done right.
Kind of take it as a purview of, it's a great read ahead, it's a great, draft, I mean, but we'll get the, the comments addressed on it. Essentially, our comment on it is have a working, formula table, provided, and have the Amelia and Newensville removed. That's the only update to it at this time. Because what is it, it's by August, or what's the end date timeframe where all villages, all municipalities have to be in agreement with the county, so the county can essentially execute
I think it's later than that, isn't it, Mr. Geis?
Yeah, I think,
end of fiscal year?
It's beyond that. It's in August or September. It has to be.
Later than August.
and we want to get our part done as quick as we can, so everybody
Yeah.
else can vote on it and be done with it.
Yeah.
So I'm going to make a motion that we table Resolution 2020-09 to our next meeting.
I'll second it.
Roll call. Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Logue?
Yes, sir.
Motion carries, and this is tabled.
I'm going to back up one step. I jumped over approval of the contract. So, gentlemen, item E on the agenda, my stuff was out of order here, and I jumped over it. So there's we're being asked to approve a contract. This would be to enter into an intergovernmental agreement between Clermont County Transportation Improvement District and Union Township. This is relative to the installation of the ITS Phase 3 EMS vehicle signal preemption devices for traffic signals within Union Township, Clermont County, Ohio. And this would also authorize our township administrator to execute all the documentation and furtherance of the same. This is the intelligent traffic system we talked about earlier, and this is for our local match, because this is a program that's actually done through OKI, and they pay a portion of it also. So that's really a good bargain for the township to get most of it paid for by OKI and just pay our portion of it. But also, it's a great safety factor, as you mentioned before, Mr. Logue, to protect not only our EMS vehicles and drivers, but also the
The
general
safety of
public.
everybody at the intersections.
Yeah, so I think it's a great addition to our township, so.
Absolutely. 100%.
Any other comments or questions?
I agree with you,
No,
sir.
absolutely, very well stated there.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Get those lights turning red, getting everyone stopped, keep everyone safe, and, get,
Get her done.
God bless whoever they're going after to help and get into the hospital.
Unfortunately, it's coming at a time where we've got a number of road projects going on, and they can incorporate it in as they're building these new
That's true.
traffic signals. So I'll ask for a motion then to, this is approval for a contract, a motion to enter into the intergovernmental agreement with the Clermont County Transportation Improvement District.
So moved, sir.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. McGee?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Logue?
Yes.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, gentlemen, if it's okay, we'll move back into resolutions again. Next would be Resolution 2020-10. This is a resolution affirming the requirements of Senate Bill 310, the Federal CARES Act. We're being asked to adopt this resolution. This would affirm that funds received from the state of Ohio relative to Senate Bill 310 and the Federal CARES Act may expend it only to cover costs consistent with requirements of Section 5001 of the Coronavirus Act, Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act, or CARES, as described in 42 U.S.C. 601D, and any applicable regulations certifying the same to the county auditor and the Office of Budget and Management prior to distribution of funding through the local government funding formula. So, gentlemen, as Mr. Guy said, this would set us up to be in a position to receive these funds to help pay the extra expenses that we've incurred due to the coronavirus. Is there any further questions or comments?
No, I think you all stated, Mr. Geis stated it very well, and you also back up.
Yeah, I agree with that as far as, when you look at this type of interaction, looking at the resources being made available, fortunately, we've been proactive with steps we've taken with Union Township and some additional what could be worst-case scenarios, but at the very least, there has been, additional costs and additional impact, and, this really just aligns us as a township to be for really cost of what's reasonable, allowable, and accountable, and just being that best foot forward to to really ensure that, at the end of the day, that's everyone's taxpayer dollars and that the most effective and efficient use is being utilized. So I think it's great to move forward with.
And Mr. Geis, this is for the benefit of the residents, but the township does have in place, and Mr. Campbell, if you want to mention or talk about this, but these funds being spent now are being tracked to know that this is the category they fall into.
That's correct.
Yes, okay. So if this money does get approved down the road, we will be in position to show what we spent it on.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. So if there's nothing further, I'll ask for a motion to adopt Resolution 2020-10.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. McGee?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Logue?
Yes.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
The next resolution is 2020-11. This, gentlemen, is a nuisance abatement resolution. We're being asked to adopt this resolution authorizing the abatement and removal of vegetation, noxious weeds, garbage, trash, and debris pursuant to Section 505.87 of the Ohio Revised Code at the following properties: 439 Oxford Drive in Cincinnati, 543 State Route 125, also Cincinnati, another parcel on State Route 125 in Cincinnati, and 3883 Banks Road, Cincinnati. Gentlemen, there's a packet of information. You've had a chance to look over. Our inspection and zoning department do a great job of presenting information on these properties. They go through a lot of steps before it gets to this level. But obviously, you can see by the pictures, there's some work that needs to be done on these properties. Is there any questions or comments regarding these citations and this nuisance abatement?
I have the same comment I always have. I cannot understand why somebody would spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a piece of property and let it deteriorate to the point where the township has to come in and take care of it for them. Get it done. It just appalls me. Believe somebody does it. That's all. I said it probably 100 times, and I'll say it 100 times more.
And we're into the, obviously, the grass cutting season. So,
Oh, yeah.
that adds to it too. But some of these are beyond grass cutting too. There's other issues along, a lot of brush and other things, and in some cases there's trash. But
How often do we ever see, I'm with you, Trustee McGee, how often do we ever see a property owner then, I don't know who can even see that, but a property owner that it may be a sign or indicative of something else that's a health care or health issue? Do we ever see that line up, that it's, the same rate with this option, this path forward? I'm sure that actually doesn't get to this path versus a, if it's a wellness check or a health check. I'm talking mental.
We have that in various times. We've had that in when the zoning department goes out. We routinely have the police officers go with them on different cases. And before we get to the point of bringing this before the Board of Trustees, we try to mitigate that and get with those people. So there's contact made with these folks. And if our zoning inspector feels that there could be a mental health issue or some other abuse issue associated with that results in these conditions, then we bring the appropriate people in there. And that does happen on a regular basis, to where there is that coordination between the zoning department and our safety services personnel, both police and EMS.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. I think that's a great explanation with it, and kind of fits my assumption with this. Thank you very much, Mr. Geis.
there
Thank
is, Mr. Logue, also in our community, often, there's some church groups, and Park National Bank's done this, where they will go around and help elderly people who just can't take care of their yard.
Yeah.
And help them get it squared away. So that's a great program that exists. But there's also some good success stories. This one's not quite there yet, but Earl's Market, we voted on that
Oh, yeah.
recently, and there has been improvement to that property. They have done some work.
Absolutely.
It's not all the way there yet.
That's terrible.
But at least there has been some movement to do something. There was a property on Sherry Lane. I don't know the exact address off the top of my head, but I know we did a nuisance abatement on it several years ago, and I was out there recently, and as new owners in the house is beautiful now. They've totally refurbished the entire house.
Great.
The yard looks immaculate now. It's the nicest looking house on the street now. So it is nice to see down the road where some of these properties get turned around and get
That's
back
good.
squared away again.
Yeah.
It is, Sherry Lane, if you haven't been down there lately, take a quick drive by. You'll be able to pick out which house I'm talking about without even knowing the address, because they've just did an amazing job fixing it up. It almost looks like one of the houses you'd see on a TV show where they just did an amazing job on it, so. But in the meantime, we got to do our due diligence and get these properties back to the way they should be. So I'm going to ask for a motion then to adopt Resolution 2020-11.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. Logue?
Yes, sir.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Motion carries.
And before I go to comments from the board members, gentlemen, I'm going to go ahead and ask, since we're still under state restrictions in the month of May here, hopefully things will open back up more in June, where we can go back to a 2-meeting-a-month schedule. But I think it would be wise at this point to cancel our second meeting for the month of May, which would be the 28th.
28.
And then we would pick up business again the second Thursday of June, which I believe is June 11th, if I got my
Yes,
dates correct.
That's correct.
And hopefully, when we reconvene in June, it'll be safe enough to bring all our departments back. If it's not, we'll continue in the fashion that we are. We'll see how things go. We'll just take it meeting by meeting.
I agree. I look forward to, like I said, having a full DS up here. The
But-
gentleman.
Before I would cancel a meeting, though, I always like to ask Mr. Campbell, since he's the payer of the bills, would that still work for what you have to do?
Absolutely.
And Mr. Wright, as far as zoning cases and things like that go?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So gentlemen, is there any discussion along those lines?
No, I just want to wish everyone well and just hope they just keep listening to the policies that are set forth by our governor and our president and all the other health officials, and stay well, stay at home if you have to. Get out and do something, be careful. Wear a mask, be careful. Don't be hugging and kissing and doing whatever you think you shouldn't do.
With you there, Mr. Trustee McGee, it's individual responsibility.
That's correct.
You know, I mean, it's across the board, and, you know, you can pick things apart from top to bottom. You can, you know, presidential guidelines wanting to decrease 14 days, you know, and the governor, I think, is actually moving against that and ahead of that, which you wouldn't know it if you listened to anybody on the street. You know, but I think community members, apartment complexes, township homeowner associations that have pools, I think as they look at the summer months, they've got to be welcoming the news that pools will be able to open, daycares are gonna open back up. I think they're being limited daycares at this point for their capacity, but, you know, those are all good steps. I mean, if we had, I think, the individual authority at this Diaz to be able to open Union Township up more, I think we would push it towards the individual responsibility, and let's work with the businesses and help where we can. Which brings me to a good point with, you know, any of our businesses that will be opening up or that were impacted. You know, I think, Mr. Geis, you and your staff can always be available for any questions that local businesses are having. You know, I know that for everything from the true small businesses to something large scale that impacts the nation is here in Union Township, and, you know, speak on TQL's behalf with that. You know, that's one of the largest freight brokers in the country, and, you know, through and through, all the way to the Patriot Act 2001 definition of critical infrastructure. That is an essential business, that is an essential service. That's, you think about the grocery stores that still have food on the shelves, that's why. You know, that's part of it. So it's really a piece of pride that can be here in Union Township, and, you know, they're able to keep open and keep operating. Have they had any issues that you've heard directly of? Fairly, you know, they've been able to stay at essentially a full capacity, but have you had to help with them with anything?
I've been in close conversation with the owners and the president of TQO, and, L3 is another company that has a national impact into that. And with TQO, there have been some questions, and we've worked through that, and they've been able to continue their operation pretty much unimpeded.
That's great to hear. That's great to hear.
Unfortunately, with technology, they're able to do a lot of remote workers from home, but they can operate the same way at home as they do if they're sitting at their desk.
Yeah, absolutely, and and that's a different push that what I believe is Google just put forward an $800 million fund. I wouldn't know all the details on this fund right now, but they're making advertising dollars available for free for small businesses. So if you're a small business owner and you're interested in getting into Google advertisements and haven't done it before, or you have done it before, say research and take a look at that as a capability or an opportunity to look at that additional incentive structure, because I think, again, to reference from the township perspective, to say open up the businesses and what we would be able to do, we're not in the physical position, physical with an F, position to be able to give dollar incentives for some of those costs and hardships, and I wish that we could be, but I think as far as looking at that and aligning to some of the programs that are out there, definitely encourage all of our local businesses to be looking that way, and again, the staff will be more than happy to answer the phones and talk and meet and walk out and get through it. Then I have a final question or an update with Mr. Wright. Just a quick question. Have you been getting more phone calls on that note for zoning, permits, anything that's showing signs of, pent-up demand or?
We did experience a rush. I mean, we continued to have a trickle, and then with the public offices opening back up on the 4th, we had a significant amount of volume. We actually received a BZA case that same week, and we continue to get calls on a regular basis about projects, people looking for projects and things like that. So.
Okay, good. Yeah, I know we sent one of our neighbors over to meet with you the other day, and they're looking to invest their local business in the township, so that's fantastic to see and hear that and be getting those calls. So, yeah, so thank you. Thank you for the update on that and the support. So, but that was I didn't mean to go too long there, but Trustee McGee, I echo exactly your point. Echo your point.
Sir.
Absolutely support it.
Well, then I'm going to make a motion then we cancel our second meeting in May and look to go back to regular schedule in June.
Second?
Roll call. Mr. McGraw?
Yes.
Mr. McGee?
Yes.
Mr. Logue?
Yes.
Motion carries.
So then I'll open the floor for comments from our board members. So, Mr. Logue, since you started, did you have anything else you needed to bring up? You
I
made some
appreciate.
good points. So
I
I don't want to cut
appreciate.
you off and let you carry on, so you can go ahead, and if there's anything else you need to bring up.
No, I appreciate it, Trustee McGraw. I probably can do well to reserve some of that to this time frame of the meeting as well, so.
No, that's good.
But
We're
no, I
always-
appreciate it, so thank you.
We don't hold too hard or fast rules around here. We just try to get the business done and be as open as possible. So.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Get her done.
No.
Mr. McGee, anything?
I've said all I need to say.
Did you, the local churches, I think at some point, has your church mentioned anything, or do you know anything about any of the local churches being able to open up at some point?
I had heard some on the other side of town through my family, but our local churches here that I know of are doing the virtual and Facebook, and doing very well.
Yeah.
Ours is doing ours on Sunday and Wednesday services, and on the internet and also Facebook. And I would assume there's probably others. I don't know whether they're doing it or not, but I don't know whether any other denominations are doing it.
Yeah, I think a lot of churches are doing a similar fashion. And I wanted to bring up a couple things just to kind of go off what Mr. Logue was mentioning. I have been in contact with our county commissioners and also our health department, just asking some questions, about where we stand. And Julia Nesbitt's tries to be as helpful as she can to answer questions. But really, we're fortunate that in Clermont County, the numbers, although we don't want to see anybody perish, obviously, and die, that's a horrible thing, or anybody get sick, but really compared to the rest of the state and other places, we've been very fortunate that our numbers have not been out of control and actually low for the amount of population we have. I think there's, right now, I believe, if you do the math, there's 56 active cases that they know of right now, which out of 200,000 people is not even 1%. So it's a very low number. The hospitals basically is not real busy, as a lot of the medical offices haven't been busy, they've been closed. So really, the township's in a position to open up and start doing business. And I try to convince our commissioners to be more aggressive with the governor, but they are sticking with the governor's guidelines, and they don't have any disagreement with the governor as far as what he's been doing. But I'm very concerned about the businesses here in Union Township being able to, carry on under these conditions. So I just want to see everybody get back to work as best they can. So in saying that, if you're a high-risk person in the different categories, especially this hit older people more and people with underlying medical conditions, you don't have to go out and you don't have to be eating at a restaurant. I mean, you can still shelter in place. So anybody that feels like they're not ready, that's fine. No one's going to force you out to do anything. And any business that does open up, we want them to be responsible and take care of their patrons to make sure they follow safety protocols.
Absolutely.
Whether it's a hair place or a nail salon, follow the protocols that are out there being done. I think they're working pretty good. So I think, we encourage our businesses to do that. And like Mr. Logan, Mr. Geis talked about, there's some large corporations too that have directly related to relief as far as this whole situation goes, and they continue to operate we want them to continue to open up and do their business. And if you can work at home, why not work at home? Especially finance people, and,
Absolutely.
higher tech companies that have the ability to set up their workers remotely. You might as well work at home and see what happens. Obviously, the schools are closed for the rest of this year. In fact, they're going to end business earlier than was on their calendar. I think they're going to end before the month of May is over. So having said that, we'll see how the summer develops and how things go, and we'll take it a step at a time. And if we have issues, we'll have to back up. But we want to see our local businesses get going again. And as Mr. Guy said, there's a financial risk to the township and also the county government and the state government. People aren't working. There's money not coming in to provide essential services. So we want to get people back working.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's kind of, again, you look at it from the top all the way down through, but there's a twofold there there's a health and wellness risk. At the same rate, there's national economic prosperity risk, and that is, again, that's part of critical infrastructure as defined by Department of Homeland Security. So everything that's being the precedent setting on closing and taking the steps for precautions for just the overall wellness and the virus response, there's the additional economic and risk that is that case. And to your point, Mr. McGraw, it kind of highlights and starts to look at a silver lining anyway of a business case for Union Township. Clermont County, and the numbers that you read off, I mean, you compare us to Hamilton, Franklin, Cleveland area, already essentially have more of a social distance footprint. Therefore, there could be the potential that you add the value proposition for Midwestern communities and counties much like ours, where people can have, great residents, but also businesses can look to invest and move to, because then they know that their people can be dispersed.
Right.
We're not a downtown metropolis of Columbus or Cleveland, and, for that matter. So, that's, again, from my perspective alone on it, that's just, the way I kind of recognize the overall situation at
In our
hand.
position here in Clermont County, we're able to provide
critical internet services, where some parts of the county don't have that ability right now.
That's correct.
So for businesses and looking for great places for the employees to live, it's nice to know we have that infrastructure where they can shelter in place and work at home and still be productive.
Absolutely, you know, I think I'd get over 250 megabytes per second, you know, at the house, and that's the, you know, that's the future of highways, you know, and you can actually see the impact of, like you said, when people were working from home and being required to. Obviously, no one wants to be under the situation that we're under the situation, and it comes back to, you know, your freedoms at question there, but, you know, that like to see and think that as Union Township goes, that we've been taking every proactive step that we can to find the right balance in between, you know, what's been asked and what's within the authority, and what we can do to support the businesses and the community members here, so.
Yeah. And I also asked our health director, we do have a number of nursing homes, assisted living, and that seemed to be an area that was hit the hardest around the country. And I just want to make sure there was testing going on, that there's extra care to our oldest people. And she did reiterate that, yes, that is an area that they look very closely at, and they are doing testing. And they also, she mentioned that they try to work with our local EMS when people are transported to hospitals to test them and to be aware of what's going on with those patients. So anyway, the county health department's a good resource if you want to, you know, learn more about what's going on with this. Other than that, I don't have any other comments, gentlemen. Anything else?
I do.
Otherwise, I'll go through the upcoming events.
I do.
Mhm.
This week is, this month is usually our Memorial Day weekend.
Yes.
I talked to Ken Williamson from the Chapter 49 Vietnam vets. He informed me there will be no ceremony at the helicopter park, so to speak, or the Veterans Park this year, just because of the separation and so on and so forth. But I believe he said someone will be there to give information to anybody who would like to have information on the veterans organizations and such. But remember our veterans on that day, if you would, please, and remember the loved ones that have passed on, and get out. You want to get out to the cemetery and see your loved ones, but be careful, stay safe, do what you need to do. God bless you all.
And I'm glad you mentioned that, because the township does participate in a number of those events.
Yes.
With our honor guard, our fire department, police department,
We do.
and the township trustees and administration. So we do want to remember our vets at this time, and those who gave their lives for Memorial Day. So.
Yeah, and their families.
Amen.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. Thank you, Trustee McGee. And Trustee McGraw, thanks for the update from the Health Department and the representation that you take to the Health Department on behalf of Union Township. Thank you.
There are a few things I just want to mention here. Our post office still continues to operate, and they are taking the safety precautions as best they can, but they are open for normal business hours here in the Civic Center. And the post office is very popular. A lot of people love that post office, so if you've never used it, give it a try next time you need to get stamps or a mail package. A lot of people just want to drop off a package as you're returning something and don't know how to do it, and it's a great place where you can bring in packages like that
Very
that
true.
are being mailed. The Civic Center offices are open to public, but for zoning permits and general information, but beyond that, the Civic Center is closed as far as other activities. Our parks are open for exercise, but the playgrounds and the other areas are still remaining closed at this time. We'll see what happens with the directive from the state as time goes on here this month. Maybe we can make modifications to it in June. Junk days, as you know, were postponed for now, and it doesn't look like we're going to be able to do them anytime soon, but we may look to do a longer schedule in the fall. So we'll figure out a date at some point. Instead of having just a few days, maybe it's been discussed maybe on a whole week to give people more time to drop off stuff. So we will have them at some point. We just got to figure out the best time. Mr. McGee, you mentioned Memorial Day. Our offices at the Civic Center here will be closed for Memorial Day, which is May 25th coming Right now, our concert series for 2020 has been canceled due to the coronavirus. Also, our Township Law Enforcement Night Out in August is also canceled at this time. Our township meeting rooms and gym remain closed until further notice. And we talked about a fireworks display for August. We've also been forced to cancel that. And the reason, you say, well, August is a ways off, maybe things will change drastically, but the problem is to make the reservation, get the contracts in, make deposits, that all happens now. And since we can't be sure what's going to happen in the future, or that things are going to be any better, we're forced to make those decisions now. So if any modification can be done in the future, we'll certainly look at that, you know, if things suddenly drastically change, but for right now, it's the best we can do. So those are all the things I need to mention. Of course, I always say happy Memorial Day because a lot of people treat it as a holiday to be with their families. But as the other trustees have mentioned here a minute ago, it's also time to reflect on all those who served our country, I believe, but especially those who gave their lives, or in some cases came home injured and had debilitating injuries. And some of those are psychological injuries. They're not all physical injuries.
That's true.
So to me, I know Memorial Day has specific definition, but my personal view of it is it's a chance to thank all veterans. And Mr. McGee, I thank you for your service. Mr. Logue, thank you for your service.
Thank you.
So I appreciate all those who do serve our country, and even if you're not injured, or you took the same risk as everybody else did. And it's just gratifying to know that there's people out there who will defend our country. And I think it's a great time to reflect and think about past wars and our guys and women who are serving right now in the service. So
That's true.
we bless them and thank them for their service. So, any other comments, John?
No, I have none.
No, just thank you, and just pleasure and honor to have been able to serve when, you know, the country needed me for that, and
Amen.
when my body was capable to do it in that exact manner. So, but no, thank you. The thoughts and prayers and stays with the fallen from our current ongoing wars and actions around the world, and all those prior, them forgiving, giving it all, and their families, and their families that continue to feel that impact. And in fact, their families know that they're remembered and never forgotten. And, you know, this will continue to do as Americans and carry it forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, if there's no further business, I'll ask for a motion to,
You want to?
oh, the public. I'm sorry.
Public wanna
Thank you,
say?
Mr. McGee. I'll open the floor now for the public to speak. Is there anyone here tonight who would like to make a comment? Okay. Well, we thank you for coming, and we thank everybody at home who is either watching live or will watch it at a later time. We appreciate everyone's participation, and we welcome comments. All the trustees have emails, and so does our administration. If there's questions or comments,
That's right.
you're welcome to, at any time, to send us information. We'll be glad to answer.
Absolutely.
All right, then I'll ask now for a motion.
God bless you all, and thanks for coming out. So moved, sir.
All right.
Second.
Roll call. Mr. McGee,
Yes.
Mr. Logue,
Yes.
Mr. McGraw.
Yes,
We're adjourned at 7:59 PM.
thank you, and happy Memorial Day.